America. Welcome to LandlordsJournal.com. We're going to have a discussion here about something that's really important for any kind of a business, not just being a landlord. We're going to be talking about asset protection. What do we mean when we say asset protection? What is asset protection?
Basically, you want to protect like in a game of chess, you want to protect the king, and the king being your personal assets, your home that you live in, your cars, the money you've saved, and in case of rental property, the homes that you've purchased that way, and that being the king. In the chess game, you want the goal of all the pawns and the players is to protect the king. So you want to manipulate situations in such a way. You want to manipulate the legal system. You want to manipulate situations in such a way to protect your personal property, to protect the assets you've acquired as a real estate investor, your stocks, your bonds, anything that you have of value. You want to protect. So
all your assets.
All your assets.
Protect from what? What could happen?
It's an insulation.
What are we need protection?
Protection from, in the case of this is we're talking about real estate, from tenants suing you, from people suing, not even necessarily tenants, anyone suing you. You want to protect yourself from people suing you, and this, unfortunately, in this world and in our country, I don't know what. Not unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. Fortunately. People have access to the courts. The court. Everyone has access to lawyers and the court system. It's easy. It's easy to sue someone in the United States. In other words, I can go down to the courthouse, and if say for example, I'm not going to educate anybody, but say I got I fell in your yard. Like I come over here and fell in your yard. I can go down to the courthouse and sue you. I don't even have to have an attorney. As long as it's a small claims court, I fell in your yard, I can sue you.
But I thought that's what insurance was for.
And that's true. And I would sue you, and your insurance may cover it, they may not. I might sue you for more than what your insurance is willing to cover. Say your insurance you only had like for example in a car. I think what's the minimum requirements for insurance in West Virginia for liability? I think $20,000.
It's not very much.
It's not very much. The minimum requirements. Say that in cars are a big liability. I mean, you're driving a liability.
A potential murder weapon.
A potential murder weapon. I mean, you're putting people make fun of me, but I'm very careful in my car. Say that I ran over some kid or something. Okay, they know that I have all this property. Yeah, I have insurance. Of course, I have car insurance. My liability insurance only covers $20,000. My liability insurance is $20,000. Well, their medical bills are more than that. They want pain and suffering. They want $100,000. There's a good commercial that plays. An attorney plays. It's in a lawyer commercial, attorney commercial. But they want $100,000. So what are they going to do? They're going to come after our assets, our houses, our personal residence, or whatever. They're going to come after that because our insurance doesn't cover that. And you can buy insurance to cover that, but
it's usually not enough.
A lot of times it's not enough, and I don't know how much. I mean,
it's not going to be $100,000. You do something that bad, it's going to be the millions.
Yeah, I mean they could. I mean they can find out. They can see. I mean they can see for everything you have. I mean a lot of times insurance does cover it, but a lot of times they don't.
Right.
So
you have to provide a barrier, a separation, to protect yourself it's like you're not anticipating, but you're in the event of, it's like your own insurance by coming up with some of these strategies. It is your insurance, by separating your name from ownership.
Yeah, and you can't stop people from suing you. It's like a security system. If somebody's going to if someone wants to be in your house, they will find a way to get in your house. You want to make it as expensive as possible and as difficult as possible for them to sue you.
You want to make it hard.
You want to make it expensive and difficult. Yes. You want to make them peel back the onion before they can. They want to make them peel back parts of the onion before they can get to the.
You want to hide your assets.
You want to put your pawns. you want to make your moves. You want to put your pawns, and you guys have played chess before, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
And you've heard my analogy before. You want to make it. You want to put all your pieces. You want to put your pawns and you want to set your strategy up. Just.
Huh?
Somebody's laughing at me.
I'm not laughing at you. I promise you, I'm not laughing at you.
Anyway, I know what you're talking. Anyway, you want to protect the king.
Right.
Insurance will do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And there are some other ways that we can do that too. I mean, insurance is probably a big one. However, there are some techniques that business people use that we have used to protect ourselves and provide that insulation. I think one of them, and we might want to spend a few minutes on formation of an LLC, you know, which is taking assets out of my name, Bob's name, John's name, Donnie's name, putting it into a company name. So if the company gets sued, you have a separate entity. It's a separate entity from you, in other words. So theoretically, if there's a judgment, they would come after, and it's not a personal judgment, it's a problem with your properties during the course of doing business, and you're sued in that respect. They come after the company's assets and not your own personal assets.
Right,
My
because
house.
you don't own it. The company
Right.
owns it.
Exactly. So
And the
it's-
other way around too. If you do
Yes.
have an
Personal.
automobile accident, a tragic accident, there's the assets of your rental properties.
Yes.
If you buy these properties and just buy them in your own name, and you know, someone can just go down to the courthouse and look up your name and find a list of all your properties, your 10 real estate properties, and they're all fair game, right?
Right,
They're all-
exactly.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing too. A lot of people will use not even LLCs but land trusts to kind of hide their property. So if you do get sued and they hire a paralegal to go down and look, let's see what this guy owns, or see if he has anything worth taking, or
Right.
whatever. And they go down there and when they look up your name, it looks like you don't own anything. A lot of people even put their personal residences in the land trust.
They
or
do doing business as
Exactly.
is another
Yeah.
option.
It looks, some paralegal, some flunky or whoever. I mean, really.
Right.
They go back and report, well, this guy didn't have anything. They have to dig deeper in order to find what you do have. If it's under several company names, if it's under land trust, they have to dig deeper. You never ever, if you were smart, you would never ever ever buy a piece of rental property, because rental property is considered a higher risk. Any business is considered higher risk. You don't want to purchase real estate in your personal name. You don't want to do that. You want to form an LLC, a legal LLC, register with the state, and purchase property that way.
What we've also read, not to get too deep here, but it is possible to do serial LLCs.
Mhm.
What you don't want to do is, if you have a company and you have 10 properties grouped together, all 10 of those properties are fair game if something happens. However, if person at this residence, if you're in a serial LLC, that may mean that you have 1 or 2 or 3 properties in one LLC, but you have another one and another one and another one, and maybe they're owned by some parent company or something like that. But if that person, something happens and they sue you in court, then you're only open for judgment on those properties in that one particular LLC. They can't touch the second, third, fourth, or fifth one down the line. And some of the stuff that we've read, some people will do an independent LLC for each property, which seems a bit excessive. But I think some people, it depends on how paranoid you are, maybe.
Right, and another thing that you can do, which we do, is separate the ownerships from the property management, separate the management from the actual ownership.
That's another good
So
point.
you can have a property management company formed, and then you could subcontract out to another property management company. So if something happens, they got to sue. You got to sue the property management company
First.
The property management company first, the owner, and then on down. So it's peeling the onion again.
I was going to say, your property management, you make sure it does not own any assets.
Right.
That's really where your protection is.
Right.
In that first layer. So the summary judgment would be against that, but you bankrupt that company, so what? There's no assets, you're done.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, but like John said, if somebody wanted to go after you, they some lawyer could probably finagle away, but it would be a lot harder.
It'd be a lot harder
It'd
and
be
be
a lot harder
expensive.
to
It'd be
go
more
around it.
expensive.
Yeah.
If you want to make it as you want to make it as difficult as possible, it's just basically a security system.
And I like how you always say, John, like, how often do people really sue somebody? I mean, you could just pick up somebody off the street and target them to sue them, but how often does that happen?
There has to be
Probably
precedence.
not.
I mean, in
Right.
your local area, this is what I've been wanting to do, is go down and see at the courthouse how many times have people lost everything that they've had due
Right.
to a lawsuit. That might happen a lot in Los Angeles, California. It might happen a lot in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But how often does it happen in the individual place, in your individual locality,
Okay,
where you actually are? How often are there judgments against the landlord, the real estate investor, or the business owner, or whatever? What
Right.
kind of legal precedence is there on that? And so that there's a lot of bearing on that. If that happens a lot in your area, I mean, we know people in our area that have owned property for decades. And
in their own name.
in their own name,
Which is crazy.
in
to me.
their own name. We won't mention any
that
names.
yeah, but it just makes me.
But in their own name.
In their own name.
And that happens more than once. And they've had property for decades. We would never do that.
But nothing's happened to
No,
them.
I mean, apparently,
not that it couldn't.
And I know
Oh my
for a
gosh, what a
fact,
mess.
I know for a fact that these individuals have had fires, have had problems, like you do in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But they still own property in their own name, and and I'm sure they've been sued. They have to have been.
Meaning they don't have an LLC. They haven't
Right.
moved those assets into another entity.
Right.
So,
And so if they had been sued to the point where they've lost everything, of course they'd be out of business. And they're still around.
and the good thing about LLCs, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No.
but that's a state thing, and I think we might have talked about LLCs here in the past, but I think they're great. Because it's individual states that determine what an LLC is, but as of right now, as far as I know, the veil of liability has not been pierced by the court system.
Right.
Meaning the courts will rule that there is a distinct separation between my personal assets and my company's assets that I'm a member/manager of. So that still is in existence. That is held up repeatedly in the court system. So there's precedence there for your protection. That's why some of these massive companies like Chrysler, we've talked before, I believe is an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of, I'm an audiologist, I looked at this, there are lots of, the hearing aid manufacturers that I work with that are massive companies are LLCs. So,
versus a different type of corporation.
Yeah.
That's what
And you
he's
don't want to
talking about.
advertise, that you own, how much you own or what you own or whatever. We're on here. We're not saying what we don't want. But there are people that put their names as their company name. I would advise
yes.
against that.
Exactly.
You don't want to advertise like if we could own this whole block. We don't want anyone really knowing that. We don't want to know. We don't want the people knowing that we own that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't advertise on our website all the properties that we own. Someone could figure that out, maybe. But we don't want to advertise everything that we own on there.
Another cool thing is a charging order that we did some
It's
asset.
not cool.
Well, it depends on your side, your perspective.
Well,
Not cool,
yeah.
but it could be an interesting tool
Right.
to dissuade somebody from coming after you. So if somebody sues my management company and they're awarded X amount of dollars, well, I don't have any assets. I don't have anything to give them. End of story. However, they have to pay taxes on it.
Right.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and that's held
They have
up
to
in
pay
court
tax-
too.
they have to pay taxes
you
on their-
pay taxes on those summary judgments,
Exactly.
even if there's nothing
Even if
for
there's
you
nothing
to get.
left. Because
So that's a nice thing.
there's been actually people awarded money, but whether you collect it or not, it's a whole another story.
Exactly.
A whole another story.
Well, we're really not.
but you still have to pay taxes on it,
but-
like you said.
Well, you have to pay taxes on it if that's a little misleading. It's not that you don't have the assets to cover that. It's that it's an amount that's based on a disbursement. You still, if you don't owe it, I mean, if there's $1 million judgment and there's no property, you don't have to pay taxes on $1 million. It's based on the amount that you're able to collect. Now that charging order is one thing, but you can't put $1 million charging order on a $10,000 asset. and have to pay $1 million taxes on $1 million.
Right. It's whatever the judgment is. Right.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not just that. It's the judgment's only valid up to the amount. You couldn't have $1 million judgment with a $10,000 asset. That doesn't work.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right.
It's based on what he's talking about with the charging order is that in an LLC, the managers can elect to make payments based on a prearranged or based on a determination that may not fit with the judgment. The judgment can say you pay it, you owe this amount of money. Well, at the time of the judgment is when that tax is due, but the payments may not come for at a different time. I think that's the difference. Because I didn't want it to sound like you could get a judgment for something where there's no asset, because there's an asset there.
What's your perspective, Donnie?
My perspective. My perspective is that in my line of work, what I do outside of being a landlord is being a physician, and it's something that I think about really on a daily basis about liabilities and being a defensive practitioner. That I spend my professional existence kind of with a healthy paranoia that I need to be aware that I'm not only treating somebody, that I am in a relationship that where I may be liable for my actions, and it's something that I think is just a really vital thing. There are other practical things. We've been talking about an LLC, but there are other kind of practical day-to-day things that where you can limit your liability. And one thing is landlords that we can fall in a trap with is with hiring people to do work on our properties. That if you're going to have somebody do something that is of high risk, if they're going to be doing something at a height, painting or on a roof, you may want to make sure that they're bonded, that they carry insurance on their company, that they have workers' compensation insurance, or that there's some way that they themselves are protected from injury on when you contract with them to do work on your property. Things about letting people borrow your vehicle. I think that there's some exposure there for people. There's just some. Those are a couple other things that you just should think about on a day-to-day basis.
And we had been advised by we were at one point we were going to have them sign their, hey, we're not responsible, blah 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 blah. But we had been advised that that's not effective. It's kind of like putting garages, or a lot of times garages will put, we're not responsible for theft or blah 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 on their sign. But in actuality, that's just a deterrent. But in actuality, you can sue and win. That's actually not. You can't. What was it that she said? You can't write off your liability. You can't. What was it she said? you can't just put a piece of paper up there and say we're not liable, blah 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 blah, for your lost or stolen vehicle. Blah. I mean, you actually can you can sue and win. You can't just put a piece of paper up and say that
Right.
you're not liable, because you could be, or you might not be.
Yeah.
But you can still be sued. It doesn't prohibit you from being sued.
Right.
Yes.
And so we can't give a person a piece of paper and say, like, if we have someone that's working for us, we can't just say, you can't do that. We make it very difficult for them to sue us. We make it very expensive, which we have done,
But
but
a disclaimer.
but we
is
can't
not
write a
enough
disclaimer. A disclaimer is not enough to. Is that
to protect your.
That's not enough to
Protect.
protect.
Must not be.
That sounded like your car.
Woo.
We're in the Jeep.
Oh.
Anyway, are we out of time already?
No.
Nope.
How much time do we have?
Maybe about 5 or 10 minutes.
Park minutes.
Yep. So, asset protection.
5:20?
21 minutes in,
We have 9 minutes left.
at least.
Oh Lord, we have all kinds of. So we haven't said much about it, Bob. What do you think?
What do I think about asset
You
protection?
think it's necessary?
I think it is. I think you can go. There can be overkill, but I think
Really, you think it could be overkill in asset protection?
absolutely.
Well, how?
I think you can take a lot of steps, and if you're not careful, what you'll do is you'll make it so complicated that it makes it hard to do business. Versus, it's about measuring your risk and understanding your risk, and then taking the steps to mitigate it. And it's like just a good example is what you talked about. We were very, very concerned about drawing up a document that says, that tries to remove all our risk from, and the attorney just said, hey, you can do that, you can write that up, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just telling you right now, you cannot write away all your risk. And that's what it boils down to. Just like John was talking about, some people choose to put each house in an LLC. I think a lot of that has to do with the value of the house. If you had $1 million house, that makes a lot more sense
Which is a 20,000.
versus a $20,000 to $50,000 house. I'm not sure that an LLC is required for each of those. I think it would be excessive. So I think it's based on your circumstances as to what measures you need to take, and it is in everybody's best interest to educate themselves on that, because there are a lot of really, I find it very interesting measures that are available to protect you.
And we can go over those on some future shows. There's some very complex ways to do that, and we've done it. And we've done some of them, explored the other ones. But like you said, I don't understand. I'd like for you to elaborate on how would it make it more difficult to do business, our everyday operations. How would it make it difficult for us to?
Well, for example, if we had an LLC for every property, that's additional fees and reporting that's required on every property, and to me it's excessive and not necessary, and we have chosen not to do that. So each person is going to have different circumstances in order to that they need to determine what their risk is and how much effort needs to be put at mitigating that risk. There are a lot of tools, there are trusts, and a lot of different things that you can protect your assets with. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of tools that we choose not to do because they don't fit with our current assessment of the risk. And so I think that it's in everyone's best interest to educate yourself on what some of these tools are, and we can go through them, some of what we've learned about each of these in more detail, and then people can.
And I think you talked about separating, $1 million house versus a $20,000 house, maybe separating that. Well, also I think it's important to separate a higher risk property from a lesser risk property. If you have a 30-story apartment building where someone could fall out the window or jump out the window or throw something out the window or an air conditioner fall out the window or whatever, you might want to separate it from, you know, your $100,000 property. You might want to separate that completely, you know. So you might want to separate the level of each property carries a different level of risk based on what neighborhood it's in, based on if it has a pool, but you know, all kinds of different factors. So you might want to do that as well.
Absolutely, and that's what I was
you
saying.
might
You do need to assess your risk, and whether
Yeah,
that be
you might want to group them into-
from the risk to your overall operation if you were to lose that property, versus and also your risk of being sued or risk of injury, and all different kinds of risk.
Right, and I also want to mention you don't want to say, for example, you have ABC LLC, and you know, and they own 4 rental properties. You don't want to go and buy a restaurant or a bar under that same LLC's name. Mixing business. You know, you don't want to go and buy a restaurant, mix it with your rental property, or go buy any kind of business and mix it with your rental property. You don't want to mix the two. You know?
I agree on that.
You don't want to do that
because there's a different.
You want to separate the LLC.
The leakage of your risk is.
I mean, you may as well just put it in your name. I mean, because everything. Well, if a restaurant, if an LLC, say ABC owns, you know, some restaurant, you know, Shoney's or something, and then they own rental property as well. So someone falls or gets poisoned on their hamburger, they're going to take the restaurant and all your property too. I mean, that's just foolish.
Yeah.
But I've heard people try, you know, mention that or talked about doing that. So we want to let everyone know that you don't want to mix businesses and the LLCs either.
And we don't.
You want to
I think it
separate,
would be in the best interest to maybe look at some different types and really drill down with a lot more detail, because all we've done is today we just licked the surface.
Well, yeah,
scratched the surface.
we're not. There's books on it. We're not going to cover everything in a half an hour, but I just wanted to do like a little. Kind of a little generalization why it's important, you know, like a little blog post on, you know, why it's important and, you know, how to do it and why to do it, and kind of a how and why session. What in the asset protection extravaganza for 2 hours. I'd like to do that one day because we've done it before. We've talked extensively.
We've spent hours and hours and hours and hours.
We've talked extensively about this. We've talked extensively, and we're already, you know, time is almost up already. And like you said, we haven't scratched the surface. But what do you think what's the biggest concern that you have over asset protection?
The biggest concern I have.
The biggest concern why would you want to protect your assets?
Because we've worked hard for them, and I don't want a mistake. That's what concerns me, is an honest mistake. I'm not so totally concerned about gross negligence. I think we do our best to do the right thing every day.
But like Donnie said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I think that I'm worried about an oversight or a mistake that's not. You know, you try to be diligent in what you do. We try to be diligent and do the right thing, but sometimes things happen, even in the best operation, the best plan you have, and I don't want that to cause the whole. I don't want to have it on a house of cards, so that one little thing makes my whole life turn upside down, and I lose my home, I lose my car, I lose everything that I've worked hard for a very long time because of a mistake or an accident. Mm-hmm. That's my biggest concern. That's why it's important to me.
That was fun.
It was. We'll have to talk more about asset protection.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we did just to close, that you can, in your operating agreement with an LLC, it gives you some leeway to set up how, to some degree, creditors can get judgments against you. I mean, we looked into that and we talked to some experts, and we structured our language so that courts have to abide by our operating agreement to some degree, so that if something does happen to one of us, in the event that happens, if something is executed against one of us, the other three are protected. You know, so
and you also
can use that LLC language.
Yeah, and
that's a great point on on the charging orders.
And you can also even have an LLC own part of the LLC. They can have another LLC own part of the LLC, and you know it can
That
get
adds
very
an extra onion layer.
right. And you can it can get very complex, but that's beyond the scope of what this was supposed to be about. But.
Well, I think Bob's point was really good. It's determining what your own risk is, because like the people that we know, they're not worried about it. Apparently,
Yeah.
They're not educated.
They don't. Well,
You don't know. It's about being informed to know when to ask the right questions, and that's why getting an understanding of what the risks are is important, because until you understand them, you're oblivious to them.
but my risk may be
That's
different
right.
than Donnie's risk, may be different. To
And it
Nathan's.
is.
And it is. I mean, everybody's risk is different.
That's
Their comfort
right.
level, you know. And like you
And
say,
how much you can tolerate.
how much you can tolerate. And these people have been tolerating it for decades.
And it's
doing-
worked for them.
and it's worked.
It's
Which-
obviously worked, but we
which-
don't want to be
I don't wanna-
lucky.
yeah.
We don't want to be lucky. We want to be smart.
Yes.
And we want to want to
Yes.
do the right thing,
Mhm.
and it be because we did the right thing, not because we just happened to not get sued.
And always consult your tax professional. We're not tax professionals. We're not liability professionals. We just talk about what we've learned and read. We know enough to be dangerous sometimes.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, always talk to a tax professional that knows what they're doing.
Or illegal.
A legal person,
And we do not
your
give
attorney,
legal advice.
and better yet, maybe do 2 or 3. Because we have found out sometimes you ask the same question to 3 different attorneys and you get 3 different
Right.
answers. Okay,
If you ask the
Yeah.
same question to 3
Um,
different accountants, all across
and
the board.
accountants too. So
Everybody, for that matter.
Yeah, so you just have to be an informed consumer, like with anything.
And some of us like to ask the same person multiple times to see if their answer
I've
changes.
done that too, and
Well, I do that on a regular basis.
and it has, and the answer is yes. Sometimes it does change, depending on the day of the week, right?
All right, America, take care of yourselves.
And protect those assets.
Protect your assets. And come back to landlordsjournal.com. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Right.
What? The Queen is.
I mean, he wants to be in charge, but when he